My girlfriend cheated with my best friend, forgot to delete their texts, and ended up owing me thousands. I remember the way my phone felt like a dead weight in my hand that afternoon. So heavy, so foreign. Like the simple act of holding it was draining the energy out of my body. It was supposed to be just another routine day. My girlfriend off at yoga class, me half-heartedly tending to emails and tasks on her old laptop because mine was acting up, that laptop, covered with stickers she'd collected over the years, funny quotes, a local band's logo, even a faded coffee stain in the corner. Always annoyed me because it was so slow, but I'd gotten used to it. We'd been together long enough that her belongings were as familiar as my own. 5 years, in fact. 5 years is a length of time that either cements you together like hardened glue or exposes every fault line waiting to break. I thought we had the glue. That day, I typed in her password out of habit. You might wonder why I knew it. We'd shared passwords for a while. Netflix, random apps, Amazon. She never had anything to hide, at least as far as I knew. And after 5 years, secrets just didn't seem like they were in the realm of possibility for us. But as soon as I logged in, I saw a series of messages pop up in the corner of the screen. They were from someone I recognized immediately, my best friend of 2 years, a friend who had been, until that moment, one of the closest people in my life besides her. I'll call him Marcus here. It's strange how you can see a name you trust displayed on a screen and feel an instant wave of dread rather than comfort. The messages caught my eye because they were explicit. There was no subtlety to them. They were talking about how badly they wanted each other. And it was recent, not old confessions from years ago that maybe could be dismissed as a drunken flirtation or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was ongoing. In that bizarre, out-of-body moment, I wondered if I was in some twisted dream. The words scrolled in front of me, and I felt my mouth go dry. My breath came in ragged bursts. And then the next thing that happened was so surreal, it's almost comical in hindsight. My girlfriend, from wherever she was, obviously realized something was up. Notifications started disappearing. One by one, the messages vanished from the screen as she hurriedly deleted them. But it was too late. I'd already seen them. What happened inside me in those seconds is hard to describe. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room, and I was left inhaling the stale air of betrayal. There wasn't even enough time for me to cry or scream. The shock gripped me too fast, too tight. I felt my fingers twitch over the keyboard, half wanting to type something, anything, maybe demand an explanation or fling accusations or ask why for the millionth time. But my hands didn't move. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it echo in my ears. The taste of bile rose in my throat, a physical reaction to the betrayal flooding my body. My phone buzzed. I don't even remember who it was. Maybe a notification from a friend, some spam email, or even a random group chat. All I know is that it jolted me back to reality. I realized I couldn't just sit there, paralyzed by shock. I got up from the couch, walked around the living room, my legs trembling so much I had to sit down again. 5 years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off, eventually moved in together, started a business together. This was someone I thought I'd grow old with, the person with whom I shared inside jokes, late-night confessions, and the sorts of daily routines you never share with anyone but the one you love. And now, in an instant, it felt like I had no idea who she was. The wave of anger came next. Just a savage rush of fury that felt too big for my body to contain. My chest felt tight, like I needed to punch a wall or scream just to let it out. My mind was racing. My best friend, for the last 2 years, had been hooking up with my girlfriend, or at least wanting to, if their messages were to be believed. How many times had he come over to our place for game nights, barbecues, chilling on the couch laughing at dumb YouTube videos? How many times had we shared drinks and jokes, thinking we were just a trio of close friends? That sense of betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd felt in a long time. I got up again, this time more decisive. I went to our bed. Her scent was everywhere. Her shampoo, perfume, even the sweater she always tossed on the bedpost. I forced myself not to dwell on any of that. Instead, I started grabbing her clothes, her books, the random items she'd scattered around, a pair of fuzzy socks under the bed, half-finished journals, Polaroid pictures pinned to a cork. Each item felt like a piece of our history, each one resonating with a memory that was now painted over in a dark hue of betrayal. My hands shook, but I kept going. I tossed everything into boxes. I was possessed by a single-minded determination. She was not going to stay in my home, not even one more night. I remember the crinkle of cardboard boxes, the squeak of the tape dispenser. The silence of the house felt eerie, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting. In that whirlwind, I even found the first Valentine's Day card I gave her. The memory of writing it flooded me. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m., trying to compose the perfect line that encapsulated how special she was to me. I'd admired how she laughed easily and how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she was genuinely happy. She had told me, the next morning, that no one had ever written her something so sweet. The sound of the memory in my head was so loud it almost drowned out the present. And then the realization that all those emotions and moments now led to this heartbreak. I folded the card once more, sealed it in an envelope, and tossed it on top of the pile of her clothes. Outside, the sun was setting. The orange glow lit up our driveway where her car was parked. The nerve of her to go to yoga with my mother today, of all days. Maybe she thought everything was normal. She had no idea the chaos unraveling at home. My mother liked her, or so she claimed. They'd bonded over health and fitness. They'd even exchanged recipes for green smoothies. It felt so bizarre that she was out there with my mom while I was discovering her hidden messages with Marcus. In that heightened state of anger, I felt an impulse, spiteful and petty, but unstoppable. I went to the fridge, grabbed a carton of milk. I looked at it for a moment, my heart hammered. In normal circumstances, I'd never dream of doing something so childish, but heartbreak does strange things to a person. I marched over to her car, opened the door. I lifted the floor mats, poured the milk underneath them. The smell, once that milk soured, would be awful. It was a small act of revenge, so trivial in comparison to the weight of what I felt, but it gave me a twisted sense of catharsis. I told myself she deserved at least that much. Stepping away from the car, I ran my hand over my face, feeling how sweaty my palms were. My mind was screaming that none of this was, that I'd wake up and find out I'd had some insane nightmare. But the boxes packed, the milk, the messages, these were all proof that it was happening. After that, I went back inside, pacing until my adrenaline died down enough to allow rational thought. Then I grabbed my phone. I sent her a message. I know everything. The messages were deleted too late. When you get back, take your stuff and leave. I stared at the screen, half expecting an apology, a barrage of frantic texts, maybe a phone call with excuses. But instead, there was silence. For once, the phone that had been buzzing earlier was eerily quiet. I put the phone down on the coffee table and took a deep breath. Her laptop was still open. The conversation with Marcus still there, though most of the incriminating messages had disappeared. I hovered my mouse over the chat window, biting my lip. Anger flared again. I clicked on his name. The chat box expanded, showing me the fragments of conversation still left. My stomach churned. Then, on a whim, I typed to him, "He knows," just 2 words, sent from her account. I watched the screen. My heart hammered. A moment later, he replied, "What happened?" I didn't respond. I'm not sure what I expected, maybe an apology or a desperate attempt at explanation. But seeing him type those words, "What happened?" sent a wave of disgust through me. How could he act oblivious? He had to have known that this affair was playing with fire. He'd participated in building a false friendship while hooking up with my girlfriend in secret, or at least fantasizing about it. Instead of indulging him, I simply closed the chat, blocked him, and sat in silence. I blocked her too from her own computer, though that was more symbolic than anything else. I should mention that she and I had started a business together a little under a year ago. We had an equal partnership, each of us holding a 50% stake. It was a small but promising venture. We sold specialty products online, leveraging both of our networks and marketing know-how. Initially, it felt like an exciting project that reflected how well we worked together as a couple. We were unstoppable, brainstorming marketing ideas late into the night, running events, building brand connections. People told us they envied our synergy. "You two are like business soulmates." Sometimes we even joked that we spent more time working together than enjoying each other's company as a normal couple. Still, we thrived on that synergy. We'd talk about how, if we ever got married, we'd have a successful business to pass on to our kids. Now, that partnership felt like a shackle I couldn't wait to break. While I waited for her to come back, all I could think about was that business. We had money intertwined in investment from her side, investment from my side, combined resources. If we split, I realized we'd have to hash out every last detail. The anger of betrayal mixed with the dread of legal complications. How long would we have to keep seeing each other to sort this out? My mind conjured scenarios of a drawn-out legal battle, or her refusing to cooperate, or me losing everything to her cunning. Because that's how I saw her now. Cunning, deceitful, manipulative. Which might or might not be fair, but heartbreak rarely brings out fairness in people. My phone vibrated. I jumped, thinking maybe it was her, but it was just an email from a business associate. I let out a heavy sigh. Then, as if on cue, I heard the rumble of a car pulling into the driveway. It was hers, which meant she was back from yoga. My heart rate skyrocketed. I braced myself for the confrontation. I peeked out the window and saw her open the car door. The boxes were stacked in the back seat, exactly where I'd put, so she must have noticed them right away. I wondered if she'd smelled the milk yet. My mother's car was nowhere in sight. She must have dropped my girl, probably for the best. I didn't want my mom to witness what was about to happen. I heard the front door open. She stepped into the hallway, calling my name. Her voice sounded small, uncertain. Usually, when she came home, she'd greet me with a sing-song, "I'm back," but now, there was none of that. She must have known I wasn't joking. I could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. She walked slowly into the living room and saw me standing there, arms crossed. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Or maybe that was just guilt. She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." She swallowed, tears glistening. I remember noticing how she looked smaller than usual, her shoulders hunched forward. She said my name again, softly this time. But I shook my head. "I saw the messages," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "I know you deleted them, but not before I read them." All of them. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Her lips quivered. I'm sorry, as though that single phrase could fix everything. It was a stupid mistake. Stop, I hissed, raising my hand. Don't call it a mistake. It was a choice. It was an ongoing conversation with my best friend, and you tried to hide it. She stood there, silent. It was obvious she wanted to explain or beg for forgiveness, but I wasn't ready to hear it. My entire body pulsed with the betrayal. 5 years, and here we were, broken in one day. She took a small step forward. We never actually, she began. I wasn't sure if she was telling the truth or just trying to minimize it. I don't care, I said flatly. You wanted to. You talked about it with him, and that's enough for me. My voice cracked on the last word. I hated how vulnerable I sounded. I wanted to appear strong, unwavering, but the pain was creeping through. She tried again to speak, maybe to blame me for not giving her enough attention or to claim it was just flirting that went too far. I didn't let her get that far. I told her to take her car, take her stuff, and go. She started to cry in earnest then, sobbing as she saw the boxes in her back seat. She must have realized just how serious I was. She pleaded with me, asked if we could talk things through. But in those moments, all I could see were the explicit lines from her chat with Marcus. I couldn't look her in the eye without imagining them together. I told her to leave. She must have realized there was no changing my mind that. Eventually, she climbed back into her car. I watched from the window, my arms still folded. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, tears streaking her face, like she was contemplating one last appeal. Then, slowly, she started the engine. She reversed out of the driveway, and just like that, 5 years ended in the span of about 15 excruciating minutes. Once she was gone, the house felt huge and empty. I collapsed onto the couch. The events of the day replayed in my mind like a nightmare on a loop. A wave of exhaustion hit me, but my mind couldn't rest. I kept thinking of every memory we'd shared, every plan we made, traveling to Europe, adopting a dog, maybe even having kids. I'd felt so certain about our future, so sure. The thought that it was all a lie made my insides twist. I didn't sleep much that night. I wandered around the house, picking up random things, trying to figure out what was mine and what was hers. The closet was half empty. The bathroom counter was bare without her array of skincare products. My phone buzzed a few times with messages from friends. One was from a mutual friend who had no idea about the drama. I ignored them. I just wasn't ready to talk about it. I needed to let the shock settle. When morning came, I tried to function like normal. Brew coffee, check emails. That's when I remembered our business. The reality of our shared venture loomed. We were still 50-50 partners. She had as much stake in that business as I did, and we had obligations. Clients, pending orders, brand commitments. Anger surged again, sharper than my sleep-deprived headache. How dare she do this when we were so entangled professionally? Later that day, I got a text from, "We need to talk about the business," it read. I stared at it for a while. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to see her. But ignoring it wouldn't make the problem go away. Then she started demanding money she believed I owed her. Shared expenses for the business, reimbursements, some personal loans we'd given each other over the year. The messages became more frequent, more urgent. I responded coolly, telling her that if she wanted to settle things, we'd do it by the book. I insisted on referencing the buyout clause in our contract, which specified that if one partner wanted out, the other had to buy them out at a valuation based on recent capital investments. That sum, as it turned out, was significant, an amount that was about 4 times my annual salary. The business was valued on potential growth, brand equity, and inventory. If she truly wanted to take it all for herself, she'd have to cough up a substantial amount of money. A long silence followed. Then, nothing. Days went by, and she didn't respond. It was like she disappeared. And with her, my ex-friend Marcus also vanished from my life. He never tried to reach out again. I wondered if they were together, consoling each other, or if everything had blown up in their faces. A million questions haunted me. How did it start? How long had it been going on? What did I do to deserve this? But the main question I focused on was how to move forward. I had time to reflect during those silent days. I cleaned up the house, tried to block out the memories that lurked in every corner. I spent hours reading through the legal documents for our business, making sure I understood every clause, every obligation. The heartbreak mingled with the stress of potential litigation. Part of me wanted to say, screw it, keep the business, and walk away, but I knew that would be foolish. We'd invested too much time, money, and effort to just let it go. One evening, maybe a week after she left, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of us on vacation, at birthdays, with mutual friends. Each image was a painful reminder of the life I'd lost. The lump in my throat felt permanent. She'd once been the person who made me believe in soulmates. Now she was a stranger who'd betrayed me with someone I considered a brother. My chest tightened again with anger and sorrow. I realized I might need therapy, or at least someone to talk to, but instead of picking up the phone, I just kept scrolling until I stumbled upon a group chat from months ago, featuring both of them. The casual banter, the inside jokes, it all felt so twisted now. Then came the messages from random internet trolls, some from acquaintances who'd heard rumors, some from complete strangers on social media. A few people asked gross, invasive questions about her, presumably because they'd heard there was cheating drama. A couple even asked for revealing pictures of her. It disgusted me. The internet's capacity for cruelty and lurid fascination is astonishing. I deleted those messages in disgust, wondering if these were real people or just bots designed to feed on misery. That entire week felt like being in purgatory. No closure, no direct confrontation, just the empty house, the silent phone, and the knowledge that everything I'd built was undone. Then, late one night, my phone rang. The caller ID showed her name. My stomach clenched. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity and a hunger for closure overcame me. "Hello," I said, my voice shaky. She was crying. "I'm sorry," she choked out, before explaining that she was staying at a friend's place, that she was devastated, that she'd made the worst mistake of her life. She told me she never planned to hurt me, that it had been an emotional thing that spiraled out of control with Marcus. She claimed they'd never actually slept together, that it was all just an exchange of fantasies. She said it felt like attention she wasn't getting from me, and that she'd been insecure about us for a while. My anger flared again. I demanded why she hadn't talked to me instead of going behind my back. She just sobbed, repeating that she was sorry. Finally, she asked if we could meet, to talk, if not about reconciling romantic, then at least about the business. I agreed to meet, but only in a neutral public place. A cafe we both knew, one that had enough hustle and bustle to prevent a screaming match. We chose a time in the mid-afternoon when it wouldn't be too crowded. I arrived first, sat at a small table with my coffee. My leg bounced nervously. The tension in my chest felt like a coiled spring. When she walked in, my heart skipped a beat. She looked thinner, like she hadn't been eating. Dark circles under her eyes gave the impression she'd been crying day and night. Despite my anger, a small, painful part of me still cared that she was hurting, but the rest of me steeled up with resolve. She sat down across from me, arms crossed over her stomach. We exchanged quiet greetings. It was awkward, like meeting a stranger. Then she started to talk, halting, about how our relationship had changed over the past year. She mentioned feeling neglected, though she admitted that was no excuse for what she did. She spoke about Marcus, claiming that it started with him giving her compliments, making her feel desired and valued in ways she felt I no longer did. She broke down, sobbing that she'd never actually wanted it to go that far. I listened. My eyes watered a bit too, but I kept my face stern. When I asked why she hadn't told me she felt neglected, she said she was scared I'd dismiss her. I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe at some point I had grown complacent. But even so, it didn't justify the betrayal. Betrayal is a choice. You can talk, you can fight, you can go to therapy, you can even break up. But sneaking around with my best friend was never a solution. She asked if we could somehow repair the relationship. I shook my head. Too much damage, I said. I couldn't imagine trusting her again, let alone letting her near me romantic. She opened her mouth to argue, but then closed it, tears trailing down her cheeks. I guess she knew it was futile. The heartbreak was thick in the air, as palpable as the smell of coffee beans around us. Eventually, we got to the business. We pulled out the contract and discussed the buyout clause. She admitted she didn't have the money to buy me out at the valuation we'd agreed on in the beginning. I told her I wasn't budging. She'd have to pay me, or we'd dissolve the business entirely. She cried again, saying she'd poured her savings into this venture, and she'd lose everything if we dissolved. I shrugged and said, that's not my problem. Maybe I sounded cold, but my capacity for empathy was nearly drained. She asked if we could continue as business partners without a romantic relationship, but I refused. I knew the tension between us would make collaboration impossible. And besides, I had no desire to work with someone I couldn't trust. By the time we left the cafe, we agreed on a plan. She had 30 days to come up with the funds necessary to buy out my share. If she couldn't, we'd sell off the assets, liquidate everything, and split whatever remained. It was the best I could do to ensure I didn't walk away completely empty-handed. She left the cafe in tears. I felt a strange numbness settle over me as I watched her go. That was, in many ways, our last real conversation. In the following weeks, we communicated only through brief, business-related texts and emails. She struggled to find investors or any way to gather the money. Meanwhile, I talked to my own circle and found a few potential buyers for my share of the business if it came to that. I was determined not to let her off the hook easily. Some days, I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I should have just let her have it, to cut the last tie between us quickly. But I reminded myself how she'd destroyed my trust and nearly blindsided me with demands for money. This was my only leverage to ensure a fair split. During that period, Marcus never once reached out to me. From mutual acquaintances, I heard he was trying to keep a low profile. Some said he was just as shocked as I was that everything blew up. Others hinted that he might still be in contact with her, but I never confirmed it. I felt a hollow pit in my stomach whenever I thought of it. He'd sat on my couch, eaten dinner at my table, laughed with me about silly jokes. I couldn't fathom how he had simultaneously nurtured a secret desire for my girlfriend. The betrayal was layered, both my romantic partner and my best friend. A few times I opened up to other friends about what happened. Some were supportive, telling me I deserved better, that I should cut them both out of my life without looking back. Others tried to persuade me to forgive, or at least talk it out, but I knew there was no going back. That door had closed the moment I saw those messages. I did schedule a therapy session for myself. I needed to process the heartbreak, the anger, the confusion. My therapist helped me realize that I needed to grieve not just the loss of a relationship, but the loss of the future I believed we'd have together. That was surprisingly comforting, knowing it was normal to feel like I was mourning multiple things at once. One evening, a random number texted. I opened it, thinking it might be a business. It was instead a stranger who wrote, "Hey, is it true your girl cheated on you with your best friend? Got any pics or proof?" My skin crawled. I blocked the number. Then I realized that the internet rumor mill was turning. Maybe someone had posted about my situation somewhere, or maybe it was just idle gossip traveling fast among acquaintances. The thought that people were fishing for explicit pictures of her made me feel sick. I might hate what she'd done, but I still didn't want to degrade her or feed that creepy voyeurism. I posted a brief statement online asking people to respect my privacy and stop asking me for personal details or pictures. That mostly worked, but a few trolls still popped up occasionally. It was a grim reminder of how quickly private pain can become public spectacle. As the 30-day deadline approached, I fully expected her to fail to come up with the money. I'd already started drafting the paperwork to dissolve the business. My heart felt a little lighter at the prospect of finally closing this painful chapter. Then, to my surprise, she emailed. She'd found a small group of investors, friends of hers apparently, who were willing to buy me out if I reduced the valuation slightly. I agreed after verifying that the amount was still more than enough to pay me back for my initial investment and half of the projected profits. It wasn't an enormous fortune, but it gave me some breathing room, allowed me to keep my dignity, and let me walk away. We met one last time at a lawyer's office to sign the documents. She looked like a shadow of her former self, hair messy, eyes hollow. Part of me felt an echo of pity, but I kept my face neutral, just wanting this final piece of business to be done. We scribbled signatures on countless pages, exchanged curt words of acknowledgement, and then we were finished. The attorney shook our hands. I looked at her one last time, remembering the vibrant person I fell for years ago. Now, we were strangers. She tried to muster a small, sad smile, but I turned away. It was over. That night, I drove home and sat on my couch, letting the reality sink in. I was free. No more business ties, no more illusions of a life together. The heartbreak was still raw, but there was a strange peace in knowing that I had made a clean break. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat down at the desk, and flipped open my laptop. My laptop, not hers. I felt the urge to write it all down, to share it, to vent in some anonymous forum. I ended up writing a post about the whole ordeal, summarizing how I discovered the messages, how I kicked her out, how we ended our partnership. The response was overwhelming. People offered sympathy, advice, and shared their own experiences of betrayal. A few creeps asked for her nudes, which disgusted me all over again. It's strange how some people can see heartbreak and treat it like cheap entertainment. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself replaying everything in my head less and less. I still had tough nights. Sometimes I had nightmares about finding them together, or about the business failing, or about losing everything. But every day, it got a little easier to breathe. I started going to the gym more regularly, trying to channel the anger and grief into something productive. I even traveled out of town to visit an old friend who lived near the mountains. The change of scenery helped. I stood on a hiking trail one morning, overlooking a foggy valley, and realized that even though my life had been turned upside down, I was still here, still standing, still myself. The memory of betrayal would follow me, yes, but it wouldn't define me forever. Over time, my ex and I had to communicate sparingly to tie up any remaining loose ends. Each interaction was brief, businesslike. She never told me what happened with Marcus. Did they become an official couple? Did they have a falling out? I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Some nights, the curiosity would gnaw at me, but I forced myself to push it away. Knowing wouldn't change anything. I deserved a fresh start, and that meant letting go of every piece of that toxic puzzle. Life has a way of moving forward whether you're ready or not. Work opportunities arose. Other businesses that wanted to collaborate with me. I started exploring new ideas, new partnerships. Friends invited me to gatherings, trying to set me up with people, but I wasn't ready to date. The wound was too fresh, but I did allow myself to enjoy their company, to remember that not everyone is out to betray you, that trust can be rebuilt in new relationships. Slowly, I stitched together a new routine, a new normal. Reflecting on it all, the logical conclusion to this story is that sometimes betrayal is a hard stop, an irrevocable end to what you thought would last forever. And that's okay. I learned that no matter how shocked, hurt, or broken you feel, you can find a path forward. You can reclaim your life, your sense of self. Yes, the heartbreak might leave scars. You may question your own judgment, replay warning signs you missed, curse the day you introduced your best friend to your partner. But eventually, you learn to breathe again, to trust again, and to believe that your future isn't defined by a single act of deceit. Now, when people ask what happened, I tell them I found out my girlfriend and my best friend had feelings for each other, feelings that manifested in messages I wasn't supposed to see, and I ended it. Some folks commend me for how decisively I act. Others say they couldn't have done it so cleanly. The truth is, I did it because it was the only way I knew how to survive that kind of betrayal. Dragging it out, giving second chances, it would have destroyed me. Sometimes you have to protect your own heart, even if it means smashing the entire structure of your life to the ground. As for the business, I'm still sad it ended the way it did. We had potential, a good product, a solid brand. But working with someone who shattered your trust is impossible. If anything, it taught me to keep clearer boundaries in future ventures, to separate personal relationships from business when possible. But that's a lesson that came at a high cost. People online sometimes joke about the petty act of pouring milk under her car mats. They say it's a small victory, that the smell must have been atrocious. Maybe it was petty. In a calmer state, I'd never do something like that. But in that moment, it felt like a tiny piece of revenge to match the enormous betrayal she handed me. I don't regret it exactly, but I recognize it was an angry, impulsive act that shows just how hurt I was. In the grand scheme of things, though, the souring milk is a footnote in the story of heartbreak and moving on. Looking back, I can't say I'm glad it happened. Betrayal is painful and it leaves a mark on your soul, but I have grown from it. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. I learned that even in the darkest moments, you can find clarity about who you are and what you stand for. And if there's one piece of wisdom I can share, it's this: trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore warning signs just because you're comfortable. Comfort can mask a lot of hidden fractures until something finally shatters. To those who keep asking if it's normal for random strangers on the internet to request private photos of your ex or any other intrusive details, sadly, yes, it happens more often than you'd think. People crave drama. They want sensational stories, and some have no boundaries. My advice is to block them, ignore them, and move on. Your personal pain doesn't need to be paraded around for their entertainment. Protect your dignity and privacy, even if others don't respect it. In the end, that's the story. A relationship of 5 years ended by a betrayal that revealed itself on a cluttered old laptop. A friendship of 2 years destroyed by that same betrayal. A business partnership dissolved. And yet, life goes on. I've emerged from this with a few more scars, but also a clear understanding of what I want from life and relationships. I want honesty, loyalty, open communication, even when it's uncomfortable. I won't settle for anything less again. And though I might not have my ex or that so-called best friend anymore, I have peace of mind. I have my sense of self, my resilience, and a future I can shape without the weight of their lies. It still stings some nights, but there's a certain freedom in standing up for yourself and removing toxic ties from your life. This is the end of that chapter, but the start of a new one that's all mine.